A once dormant pass rush that came to life against Seattle. Packers racked up 7 sacks in that 30-13 win. LaFleur was asked if that gave him confidence the pass rush is headed in the right direction.
You can't just rest on what you've done. You got to keep digging, and this is what I'm talking about in terms of where we need to focus. Like I said, it's never going to be perfect, but you got to keep striving for that perfection, and it starts with how you attack practice, the energy you come into the building with. So that's kind of where our focus is.
Again, it'll be the Packers and Saints on Monday night at Lambeau Field. Packers going to be back in the field for practice tomorrow for the first time this week. Turn to the Badgers. They have 2 openings on their coaching staff to fill. The first is new. Quarterbacks coach will pair with new offensive coordinator Jeff Grimes. Then there is the safety position after Alex Grinch left to be the new defensive coordinator at UCF. Means the Badgers will have a different safeties coach for a 4th year in a row.
Actor portrayal.
When I first looked into life insurance, I worried about the hassle. Then I found Better Life. Their simplified issue whole life coverage plans mean no medical exam. I found a plan that fit my budget, and now my final expenses are covered. Plus, I get Better Life member benefits at no extra cost. That's definitely better.
Better Life Insurance, where better means belonging. Call 888-488-4136. Insurance issued by Better Life Insurance Company. Terms and conditions apply. Member benefits are subject to change. Contact a licensed agent for details.
Well, the Bucks will get back in action on Friday against the Cavs after winning the NBA Cup last night out in Las Vegas. Milwaukee has won 11 of their last 13 games. And the Badgers off until Sunday when Detroit Mercy comes to Madison for the final non-conference game of the season. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil-Prin.
Thank you, Malika. To the people of Las Vegas, thank you for being such wonderful hosts. To Oklahoma City Thunder, thank you for competing so hard for an incredible run. And to the Milwaukee Bucks, congratulations, Wes, John, owners, Doc, what an incredible show. Now for the players, first of all, for these young folks from the YMCA, we have some special medals to present you. Please present the medals. All right, and now, Wes, for the presentation of the Emirates NBA Cup, your champions, the Milwaukee Bucks. Come get your trophy.
No one here doubted what we can be and who we can be. And we just hung in there. We stuck together, and this is the byproduct of a team sticking together. But we still have work to do.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
A little sound from last night in Las Vegas, the Bucks winning the NBA Cup, the Emirates NBA Cup, which I know we jumped the advertiser shark with bowl games and sporting events a long time ago. It's just like please, NFL, never make it the Google Super Bowl or whatever. It doesn't ruin the event. I'm not saying it's the end of the world. It's just, it's one of those little things that I think on some level we all find annoying. From the Emirates NBA Cup last night, so you heard from Doc Rivers there, Adam Silver. By the way, I added the trophy presentation music. That was me. That's not how it sounded. That would be kind of funny, though, if they add the Super Bowl, right before the Super Bowl presentation when they're marching the Lombardi through the crowd on the field. And, Bradshaw always used to do it. I don't know who's the representative for Fox who's going to do it this year, if it's Strahan or Kurt Menefee or who, maybe I think Howie Long would do a good job. I don't know. It's pretty funny with the music behind it, though. Kind of a funny scene. They won the Emirates NBA Cup. That deserves to be celebrated. There's a trophy and there's a whole thing. It's like, so Malik Andrews going to interview everyone, and then Adam Silver's going to, and the owner's there. Great. Just kind of a funny scene last night. Not saying that it's not warranted, not saying that it's stupid or that it's cheap. It's just kind of funny, which I'm sure people said about the Super Bowl back in the day. It's like, what is this whole, the AFL and the NFL are playing. And look at us now, 50 some years later, 60 some years later. I don't think that'll happen with the in-season tournament with the NBA Cup, but who knows? We have no way of knowing. We're only 2 years into the thing. This is the Wisco Sports Show. My name is Grant Bills. That's where I want to begin tonight. I want to talk about the Bucks for a couple of minutes. And NBA Cup aside, they're just playing really good basketball. And we talked for a couple minutes about them with Justin Garcia last night. So we'll kind of build off of some of the talking points that we hit last night with Justin from the Bucks Radio Network. I also have a very specific Packers prompt that I'm kind of stealing from Bill, but I think we probably would have talked about it. If not tonight, we probably would have had this conversation tomorrow or Friday anyway. So I have a very specific Packers prompt that I want to ask you about, and then I want to pick your brain about in just a couple of minutes, maybe around 4:30, 4:45. Jesse Temple will stop by in hour number 2, his weekly visit to bring us up to date with the Badgers. They've added some D linemen. They've added 2 quarterbacks. Alex Grinch departed to take the defensive coordinator job, I believe, at Central Florida. So they'll be looking for a 4th position coach at that position in 4 years, in as many years. And they're looking for a quarterbacks coach too. And, some bigger picture questions with Jesse too about how they've handled the offseason and the transfer portal so far. So that's coming up in hour 2. I wasn't planning to talk about this, but the last hour or so, everyone's talking about UW Green Bay and Doug Gottlieb. They lost a bye game to Michigan Tech today, which, look, no one has more deference to the GLIAC, the Great Lakes Interscholastic Athletic Conference, I believe. Love the GLIAC and the teams from the UP. So far be it from me to mock either Northern or Michigan Tech. But it's not going well at UW Green Bay, and Gottlieb got in a fight with Schefter on Twitter the other night. I actually am on Gottlieb's side in that one. And then he made a comment before the game today that picked up a ton of traction on the internet. And I don't care about Horizon League basketball. I know some of you do, and that's great. I just can't focus on everything and care about everything. But this has become such a big deal, at least on the internet, with Wisconsin college basketball fans. I think we have to talk about it. I have some audio to play for you at some point tonight. It's just kind of become the thing this afternoon that's getting discussed on Twitter. And it interests me, not from a perspective of someone that cares about Horizon League basketball, but from the perspective of someone who cares about interesting sports stories. So at some point over the next 2 hours, we're probably going to talk about that, which should be fun. And if you have thoughts and you are a Horizon League basketball fan, I'd love to hear from you. 608-321-1670 is the number to text and call should you want to join the show. And the live stream is up YouTube and Facebook. Search either page, the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills. Very specific show name, very specific name. I'm not John Smith. It's not hard to find. I'm also on Twitter, and the show streams there too, at Wisco Grant. Hat tip to the Bucks. It's been a really impressive run, not just last night. Beating Oklahoma City is one thing, but in this run, they also beat Atlanta, which is an impressive win for all the reasons we talked about with Justin last night. They beat Orlando amidst this run as well. They have a run of wins in this stretch in the in-season tournament or in the NBA Cup against younger teams, deeper teams, teams that present a lot of challenges for a team like the Bucks, an older team, a top heavier team. Orlando presents challenges. Atlanta presents challenges. Oklahoma City, not only are they great, and they were a top seed in the West last year with a ton of talent, but the type of team that they are, the type of players that they have, presents challenges to a team like the Bucks. And that's the gambit, that's the path that they had to take to win the Emirates NBA Cup last night. And I think in order for the Bucks to be a contender this year, I don't think the Bucks are ever going to be neck and neck Bucks Celtics. We're never going to get there. I don't think, unless some crazy things happen the next couple of months. A global pandemic, for example. I don't know. Maybe that could be one thing. I don't think anything's going to happen over the next couple of months. I don't think anything's going to come to pass where we're Bucks Celtics coin flip series. No, I think the Bucks will be underdogs in a potential playoff series against not only the Celtics, but maybe the Knicks and who else, who knows how the East is eventually going to settle. But I do think the Bucks can get to a place this year where it's could they go on an improbable run? Could they get hot? I think they could get there. To get there, they're going to have to do a couple of things. Their star power is going to need to shine through, and their stars, Giannis, Dame, Chris, they're going to have to complement each other. Okay. They're going to have to synergize. Giannis plus Dame is going to have to equal something that's greater than Giannis and Dame, right? The sum of the parts will have to level up with the stars, the aging stars, the veteran stars, the experienced stars that they have. They're going to have to defend at a high enough level. They don't have to be the best team in the league on defense, but they have to be good enough. And they got to get some contributions from their younger guys like AJ Green and Andre Jackson Jr. And I think last night and throughout this run, if you want to call it that, to win the NBA Cup, I think they showed us all of those things. Giannis and Dame are melding and they're playing really well together and they're complementing each other. And every time I hear them talk, they're like, it's only going to get better. We're working to become an even better duo. And now that Chris is back, although he didn't play last night, he adds a lot of things. We talked about that. If you missed my conversation with Justin last night, I tried to make it a big enough picture conversation with Justin where even if you listen to that today, or after already watching the result last night, it's still a worthwhile listen, right? We talked about some of the things that Chris has added to the team, even in limited action since coming back. I think their star power is shown through. Giannis was clearly the best player on the floor last night. They're defending at a really high level. They defended really well against the Thunder last night. They controlled Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, kept him in check, and forced the other guys to make shots. And with a lot of these younger teams, think of the Bucks in 2018, 2019, when it's one supernova player who's driving and kicking to three-point shooters. Well, in the regular season, in games that are kind of just ho-hum games, those perimeter shooters can be really great. Think of Grayson Allen or Nikola Mirotic or players like that. You get into a playoff situation or an NBA Cup now situation where the opponent is really going to put the screws to you. Some of those three-point shooters, they start to struggle a little bit. I think I bookmarked this tweet. Let me go back. I'll read it to you because it perfectly hits this. This is from No Tech Ben. He's been on the Bill Simmons podcast before, Ben Thompson, but he's got a separate account about the Bucks. Smart guy, stratechery, I think is his thing. He tweeted, OKC reminds me a lot of the Bucks with Drew while Middleton was hurt. Not enough on-ball juice and too reliant on fake good shooters. Works in regular season, but not in playoffs when defenses try. I think that's fair. That's maybe a little harsh. Fake shooters it's a little bit aggressive because I don't think the Thunder have fake shooters. I think they had a bad shooting night. Maybe their shooters aren't as good as the percentages would lead you to believe. But I think that's a fair enough observation. That's a fair enough summary. So they're defending. They defended that team at a high level and exposed some of the problems with that type of team. And I think it's reminiscent of, the early Bud teams when the Bucks first got good, but they, clotheslined a little bit. They ran into some obstacles in the playoffs. And they also got contributions from their young guys. The job that Andre Jackson Jr. did against Shai Gilgeous-Alexander last night was excellent. And the job that AJ Green continues to do has been excellent. So the Bucks are checking these boxes. It's like, hey, if this is going to work and you guys are going to get a legit opportunity to maybe take down some good teams, some teams that we think are better in the playoffs, you have to do X, Y, and Z. And we're watching them do X, Y, and Z. They've shown a ton of progress the last couple of weeks. And starting 2-8, they're now 13-3 in their last 16 games. Right. And I was BSing with intern Austin this morning, who's going to be running Bill's board next week. So you can look forward to that when I'm up in Eau Claire doing some live shows. I was BSing with Austin this morning, and he's like, look, I don't really buy into the NBA Cup. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but they're winning. Forget the label. Forget this in-season tournament that the NBA is getting up and running now in year number 2, right? Forget that. They're winning. They're 13-3 after starting 2-8. Like, this team has just gotten much better. So even if you don't buy into the NBA Cup, the results kind of speak for themselves. And for what it's worth, I'm buying into the NBA Cup, I think, the appropriate amount. It's fun. It's different. And come on, it's December. Anything outside of the ordinary, anything that gets even, 5 or 10% more attention, it's worthwhile for the NBA to do. Like, I saw Dan Patrick this morning. I saw a clip. I think I saw it on YouTube, and I might have also seen the breakout clip on Twitter. And the name of the segment was Adam Silver needs to try something new in the NBA. It's like, guys, we're doing it. They're in the midst. We just saw it last night. They're in the midst of trying something new. Year 2 of the NBA Cup. Now, Adam Silver is probably going to have to continue to tinker and change some things. All leagues do. All commissioners do. But I just, the way that the NBA is talked about, maybe this is a separate segment for a separate time, but we're always like, the NBA Cup, that's stupid. That'll never catch on. Anyways, the NBA is in trouble. I really think Adam Silver needs to try something new. It's like, are you listening to yourself? They are trying something new. I think the league realizes that they need to tweak and change. And I'm not sitting here telling you, guys, the NBA is actually really awesome. You just don't see it, you dum-dums. Like, no, I think they're dealing with some issues, but doing an in-season tournament, all right, that's a good start. That's something else. It's a reason for fans to pay attention a little bit more. And, however much weight you want to put on the NBA Cup, that's fine. I'm just glad that my team competed hard, wanted to win the games. It mattered to them. I'm glad that my team isn't just like, oh, ho-hum, what's the point anyways? Like, no, if we're playing in games, I want to win the games. Don't you want to win? You're in Vegas. You might as well win the thing. I almost said the stupid thing. I don't believe that it's stupid, figure of speech. You might as well win the thing. You're there, right? If every team approached, to be fair, almost every game, not every game, because there's 82 of them. It's not going to be lights out every night. But if you can approach most of the games, almost all of the games, with the same energy and competitiveness that teams like the Bucks approach the NBA Cup, guys, the league would be so much better. It's been my biggest complaint about the NBA this year, but also stemming back to last season as well. It's like I can buy tickets to a Bucks game and be sitting at Fiserv Forum, and it's the second quarter, and my team's down 18 points, and I can clearly see that they go, screw it. We're done. It's like, okay, but I bought tickets. I realized that I'm not going to see my team win every night. I'd at least like to see a competitive game where both teams are trying until halftime. You know what I mean? I don't think that's too much to ask. If I come home to turn on my television and fire up the cable package that I pay for, right? And pull up FanDuel Sports Network, which isn't available on the most basic cable providers. You need to go up a level for that. That's extra money, right? I don't want to see a game where one team throws in the towel after one quarter. That's lame. That's my bone to pick with the NBA. And you might have others. Like if you don't like all the social justice messaging in your face, that's fine. You can feel that way. I know a lot of folks don't want to get that when they watch sports. That's more than fine. If you don't like the studio shows, if you don't like the presentations, like, oh, ESPN, they're a bunch of hacks. And what is this halftime show? Yeah, I agree that some of the presentation over last year, especially with the shuffling of the play-by-play teams on ESPN ABC for the final, it hasn't been great. If you don't like all the three-point shots, it's too many threes. I don't want to watch them shoot all these threes. That's this modern play style, threes and layups. If you don't like that, that's fine. I can put up with all of that stuff if I can turn on a game or if I can go to a game and I feel like both teams really want to win. That's it. That's all I'm looking for. That would be 99%. I would be 99% satisfied with the league if I could turn on a game or buy a ticket and go and feel like 99% of the time, 9 out of 10 games, it's like, oh yeah, both teams really want to win tonight. Like if I can get that from the NBA, more than happy. And I can put up with some of the other stuff that maybe I don't love, the play style or the television product. Like, yeah, it's like, who's in the booth now? Like, why is we have to listen to Stephen A. Smith and Kendrick Perkins talk about the Knicks in a pregame show for the Rockets and the Thunder or whatever it was the other night. Like, yeah, that's dumb. But if the teams are locked in and trying to win and it matters to them, I can put up with all the other stuff. If the product is good, if the teams are in it, and I feel like the teams are bought in like I am as a fan. And I think the NBA Cup has accomplished that. I've watched some games where teams are really locked in and trying to win. I think that's a good thing. They probably don't need to hang a banner. If they do, who cares? We're going to lose sleep over that, right? I know the trophy presentation, it's like, oh, we got the commissioner and the owner. Like, yeah, okay, maybe it's a bit much. But the games were great. And if it gives us a reason to tune in December, I think it's cool. And if my team's involved, they might as well win. And I'm glad that they took that approach. If you have any thoughts on the Bucks, 608-321-1670. If you're a Horizon League fan, I think at some point tonight we're going to talk about what's going on with Green Bay and Gottlieb because it's interesting. Not because I care about the Horizon League. Not that you can't, not that you shouldn't. In fact, if you do, I'd love to hear from you. But I just think it's one of the more intriguing stories of the day. So we'll continue to talk basketball. We'll talk Packers as well. We'll talk Badgers in hour number 2, Jesse Temple. Your calls, 608-321-1670 next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It is so sweet. It's so great to be here. You know, last year it all happened kind of fast. We were very happy to be here. This year when they came in, they were here to do the business, finish the job, and they did it tonight.
That's Bucks owner Wes Edens last night. Because, man, when a team accomplishes something special, even if it's just the measly Emirates NBA Cup, who do you want to hear from? Obviously, the owner. I believe that if I had a vast fortune and I owned a professional sports team, I would have enough self-awareness to be like, no, they don't want to hear from me. I'll go down there, I'll high-five people, but talk to the players, talk to the coaches. But maybe if I amassed a huge fortune and had a lot of money and I was powerful, maybe I don't know. Maybe the ego, maybe the showmanship just comes with the fortune and the power and the control. I don't know. I just always laugh when the owners are the first person to hold it. They're the first person to talk. It's like, why? Don't the owners realize that we're kind of laughing at them? Even on the inside, even if we're not doing it outwardly. 608-321-1670 to your calls as promised. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant, Tony from Texas. Great topics as always.
Oh, thank you.
Hey, really quick, 30 years ago, Brett Favre played in the last game at County Stadium. Had a famous jump into the end zone for the last play of the game.
Well, you're from West Dallas. Did you ever go to a game at County Stadium?
Oh, man, I'm a gold package veteran, of course.
Through and through. Good for you. Yeah. Stuff it up those Green Bay.
Absolutely.
Stuff it up those Green Bay people's rear ends. You be proud of your gold
Absolutely.
package heritage.
I will always support the gold package.
Good.
But yeah, I bet you some of your fans like Cone Roller don't even realize they played in Milwaukee. Really, I don't know.
Yeah,
But,
maybe we certainly, don't have a lot of, I don't know. I don't know that they had a ton of iconic moments. Favre at the end, yeah. I don't know.
They
Should
sucked.
we?
They did.
Yeah, I was going to say they mostly sucked. So like, what am I supposed to know? Is that history I need to learn? I don't think so.
No, but I mean, this history that's in the making of UWGB and UWM, speaking of Milwaukee, Green Bay, this is getting outstanding. I love it. The drama that's going on with these schools and
Yeah.
Doug Gottlieb.
Yeah, I am. Why am I always defending Doug Gottlieb? Like, I think I'm going to defend him a little bit. His team stinks.
Radio guy.
Yeah, but I don't even know that that's it. Like, don't come after my fellow radio guy. Like, trust me, deep down, like, no one hates other radio guys like radio guys. Like, radio guys. What did this a-hole say on his show? Oh God, I would never. I'm not a hack. Everyone else is a hack. That's how all radio people feel, myself included.
I have not heard you not get along with anyone, but maybe you got some skeletons in the closet I don't know about.
I keep it deep down. Yeah.
Hey, the NBA, I'm going to make this quick.
Go ahead.
They've had their issues throughout I'm a big NBA guy. I always have been. Right now, they're losing me a little bit. but they've had these issues. They had the cocaine issues. They had people like racism issues, people that just couldn't handle like an all black team. These were real issues the NBA had to overcome. And then Magic and Larry and Michael and all these guys built up all this equity. Kids like me were watching this. They wanted to get the tennis shoes and be like Jordan. And then they built all this stuff up. But you know what they always did, Grant? They came to work. They came to work. They did. This is what sports is. It's entertainment. It's like if I go see a movie and Bradley Cooper is supposed to be in that movie, he better be in that damn movie. I don't need someone from the Lacrosse Performing Center in that movie.
Yeah.
I want to see my stars playing other stars in high leverage games. Last night was super cool because we actually saw what Giannis versus SGA would be like. That was pretty cool. And the Bucks put the clamp. Props to Doc Rivers for making that happen. But the NBA's got some issues, and just come to work. Do your job.
Well, and this is what I said in the opening segment. Tony, that's a great call. Thank you for getting us started. I said in the opening segment, look, lots of different folks might have lots of different problems with the league. All right. I'm not going to pretend like all of the in-your-face social justice stuff doesn't turn some people off. I don't really care because I just ignore stuff if it bothers me. Okay. But I understand that people get hung up on that. That's fine. If you don't like the TV coverage or the voices on the games, I understand that. That's valid. If you don't like, too many threes, I get that. Look, my only issue with the NBA, if I could just turn on every game knowing that both teams really want to win this game and they're going all out to compete and win this game, everything else is secondary, right? If the product is pure and the games are pure, right, I can put up with everything else. It's all secondary. It's all noise. And Tony, your point about, the history of the league, Bill Simmons kind of pointed this out on his podcast today, and he did it in a very Simmons way where he went through the history of the league. Maybe the NBA should be viewed as a league that's historically always had issues, but it's had stretches of years where certain players or certain storylines really brought it up. So the baseline of the NBA maybe should be thought of as, this kind of middling league with issues. But man, Magic and Kareem, and why can't I think of it? Bird. Thank you, Jesus. Magic, Bird, and Kareem, like that was a decade where it really popped. And then Jordan, that was a run where it really popped. Hey, Kobe and Shaq a little bit, but then LeBron, right? Then it popped. And then we have these in-between stretches, and we might be in an in-between stretch right now. I think the goal of the NBA should be to make those stretches as short as possible. We need to get back to a hot place, whether it's through super teams or star players or whatever, right? We just want to make those lulls as short as possible. And I think we're going to have a lull as LeBron and Steph Curry age. Who's next? I think that's kind of something the league's struggling with, but they've always struggled with things, to Tony's point. The cocaine thing, I don't know how much that bothers you, but that was a real thing. There's always been issues. It's just been every once in a while these stars or these teams pop up where the league really has some salad days, and I think we're kind of in between salad days right now. 608-321-1670. More of your calls. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Buy or sell. The Bucks NBA Cup is more of a ring than the Lakers 2020 bubble championship.
Very different. I still don't know how I feel about the bubble cone. Because part of me is like, it doesn't count. But then also part of me is like, it counts just in a very different way. Like, I don't even know what to do with that thing still. And we're almost 5 years removed now. Isn't that wild?
What about a Bill Russell Celtics ring?
Yeah, when there were 8 or 9 teams in the league, when you're playing against the Cincinnati Fire Cannons or whoever they beat back in the day.
Yeah.
Look, I have no problem with the Celtics. What do they have? 18 banners? No problem with them counting the 18, but then the Packers get 13 world championships. You can't shoot down some teams' historical titles, but prop up. Like, it seems the sports apparatus is like 18 banners for the Celtics. Okay, fine. But then I want my 13 as a Packers owner. We have 13. That's how it works.
Hey, I no complaints from me. And I think with the midseason NBA Cup, whatever it's called, I think, the first part of solving a problem is admitting you have a problem. And at least the NBA is doing that with this regular season championship, trying to get some gusto behind it. So, I think they're on the right track. What I'm really excited for is I think this coming up All-Star game is going to be atrocious once again. And with the whole ratings talk, I think we're in for some just wild takes after the All-Star game about how they can fix the NBA.
Oh, God.
So at least from a content perspective, I'm excited for that.
Do you really care that much about how good or bad the All-Star game is? That's another thing. We always talk about the All-Star game. Let's pause Does anyone actually care? You know what I mean? Or do we just get fired up so we can talk about it and use it as content?
Definitely the latter.
I think so. Whatever. I like the content. It's just like if we can all be honest with each other and say that it doesn't matter at all.
That's sports radio, though. That's what fans talk about. So, I think it has some validity behind it.
Yeah, I would agree. This is important, Cone. We lose sports radio and the topics and the art of sports radio. Sports aren't the same. This is a piece of it. I believe that. I mean, I do it for a job. Do you have a Gottlieb take? I saw you tweeting about it. I don't know when I'm going to get to it tonight, but I'm going to play some comments from him at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I get Doug Gottlieb has not had success at Green Bay. He's a lot more talk than results right now. But the people like Adam Schefter coming at him, first of all, Shefty is just a loser. Congrats on getting the scoop 5 seconds before everyone else. I'm glad you stayed away from your wife and family on a family vacation to get that scoop that Jason Pierre-Paul's finger got blown off in a firework accident. So first of all, congrats, Adam Schefter. I'm glad you built up this fake ivory tower you cast your, judgment on. So good for you, Schefter. And, in the era of NIL and college athletics, look, a school like Green Bay needs to make these crazy hires. I mean, we just saw Michael Vick get hired at Norfolk State for football.
Yeah.
These small schools need to do that to get some relevance, some funding. So, credit to Green Bay for making that splash. I think Gottlieb, could be a good coach one day.
I'm not out on Gottlieb being a good coach. And Cone, I appreciate it. That's a good call. I kind of like the guy. I've always liked his show, but I think I have a penchant for solo hosts. It's just kind of my style. It's what I do. It's the kind of show that I do. So maybe that's why, although I like sports talk shows that are multiple voices too. I like his delivery, how he's kind of patient and how he doesn't really yell and kick and scream too much. I like his show. I don't agree with all of his takes. And sometimes I'm like, Doug, do you really have to yeah, you're right, but do you really have to bang this drum? I don't know. Everyone seems to really hate the guy, at least online, although most people hate most people online. But it's just everyone from the moment this hire was announced, everyone was so against it. And the results haven't been there. Cone's point. You can't defend the result. The results have been bad. I also think that's got to be one of the tougher jobs in Division I hoops. UW Green Bay, especially in an NIL era where a scholarship really is that's not a selling point. That's the starting point. Right. So it's a hard job. And some of the comments that he's made, he was right in his exchange with Schefter. Doesn't mean he should have argued it, but he was right. And then Schefter pointing out his record is okay. So that's the equivalent of Schefter pointing out a grammatical error in a tweet exchange to try to win the exchange. Okay, yeah, his basketball record is what it is, but Schefter, your original point was wrong. He was saying Sacramento State has $50 million in NIL funds. There's no way. And Gottlieb talked about that today. I actually thought it was a good explanation. So I'm not sitting here saying that Gottlieb's going to be the best basketball coach ever, but geez, from the moment that hire was announced, everyone just hated it and hated him. And I know he's doing a radio show at the same time, but I don't know. There's always been there's more unconventional choices now in college basketball than ever before. I was getting to one more caller on hold. Sorry, I rambled a little long and you dropped off. I'll take you on the other side of this break if you're able to call back in. 608-321-1670. A couple of texts here before I take a break. We'll come back. Let's get into the UW Green Bay stuff right when we come back. Might as well. We're already on the topic. Great man Mike on the Bucks. Biggest takeaway from last night is that Giannis believes he had the first triple-double in the midseason tournament. Giannis tied LeBron for most midseason tournaments. Darvin Ham is the winningest person in the midseason thingy. Am I still rambling? Sorry, go Bucks. It was a great game. It was a great game. And for them to beat Oklahoma City, Oklahoma City's a real team that's young and fast and athletic, and they provide all sorts of issues and present all sorts of challenges that are an issue for a team like the Bucks. Same with Orlando, same with Atlanta. And those are the teams that Milwaukee beat to eventually advance to last night and win last night. That's an impressive run. This text just says, good Bucks content, more please. Well, thank you for listening. This text says, not to say that the NBA doesn't have issues with player injuries, but how many backup quarterbacks do you see every week? How many starting pitchers go down in baseball? The season has to be shortened to help players play more and get games to matter more. Come on, Grant, don't shame the NBA Cup. I'm not shaming the NBA Cup. Not at all. Not at all. I'm saying that this is a great mechanism to get more players to lock in and care about more games. The injuries, yes, you have a good point. They also get hurt in the NFL. They also get hurt in baseball. But for the fifth year in a row now, everyone on the Pelicans is hurt. It's Zion's out indefinitely again. Brandon Ingram's hurt again. I don't know. I guess you could draw a comparison to football and baseball and be like, it's really not that different, but for whatever reason, it feels really different. And that's something that the NBA has to deal with and try to fix. I don't know that it's 100% fixable, but you got to start to try some things. And I think step one of trying some things is Adam Silver installing an NBA Cup in December, which I think is a success. A small success, but any success is a success right now for the NBA in the spot they're in. 608-321-1670. Let's talk a little Horizon League basketball next. The story is just wild.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's the Wisco Sports Show. I want to talk Packers at 5 o'clock. We're going to talk Badgers at 5:30. Jesse Temple will be here from The Athletic. I was looking forward to chatting with him. Bill Michaels Huddle taking over at 6 as well. Hours and hours yet to go on the network tonight. Mike Clemens tonight. You'll also hear from Mark Schofield, as you do every week. And Mike Renner made an appearance on Bill's show earlier today. So you hear some of that conversation tonight as well as the latest from Mike Clemens. I want to talk about UW Green Bay, not because I'm someone who's hyper-focused on the Horizon League. I'm more focused on the WEAC. I'll pay more attention to Division III. But what's going on with Doug Gottlieb is just kind of insane, and everyone's talking about it. So I'm interested by it. I'm compelled by it. I want to talk about it. First, I said I would get to any calls on the other side. There's one caller on hold because I missed one before the break, and I feel bad, so I want to give him a chance. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Eric on I-90.
Eric on I-90 a little early this evening.
Little early.
What's going on?
You know, I want to keep people guessing. Keep people guessing.
I heard you were on a roll on the morning show this morning. I didn't hear your call, but people were buzzing.
Well, I didn't know. I thought it was more just a normal call, but I appreciate that. I appreciate that. I do. I like, if I can make Ebo laugh, that kind of starts out my whole day.
It starts my day. I always leave me satisfied and smiling.
Right. It's good that the Bucks won this thing. I'm pretty happy about it, and it's kind of a little bit of a lull here in the NFL because we got Green Bay who's going to beat up on the Saints on Monday night, right?
Mm-hmm.
Minnesota should win this game in Seattle. I don't think they're signature games, right?
No.
We're not even going to get a signature game.
Especially because I don't know if Geno Smith's going to play. He's hurt. He might not even play, so he might be playing a backup. Seattle's still no joke. You got to go on the road and win a game, but yeah, I would agree with you. Minnesota should win.
See how we're getting cut short. Last week, you guys got a signature game out of it. This week, we get nothing out of it. Just a win.
Yeah.
So we'll take a win.
Well, and the Packers can't get a signature win against the Saints on Monday night. Now, they can get some style points. That's what we're going to talk about at 5, but I don't think it can be a signature win.
Right. Now, what I really find interesting is kind of the interaction between me and listening to you talk about the Bucks, because I'm a Bucks fan, and you're like, in your monologue, you're like, hey, maybe a few things can happen. We did it together with the NFL. Maybe we can go to the championship. And I'm sitting there going, my God, Grant's right. We could.
Maybe.
And I'm listening to you. Maybe, but you're giving me hope. You're like it's like I got a little subconscious Grant on my shoulder. And he's saying, we could do this, but then if you're talking about the Packers in that fashion, I'm like, that Grant, he's such a homer. I'm going to call in and get him straightened out. Right?
Yeah.
So I find my reaction interesting to it.
Well,
you'll say,
I think that's all we're trying to convince ourselves with the Bucks is the door open? You know what I mean? Could we get in a playoff series against the best teams in the conference and have a shot? All right. If we can get that, then I'm happy considering we started the season so poorly.
Well, I guess we have to give him a chance, and we have to give the head coach a chance. I mean, for Christ's sake, last year he was announcing this thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
A year removed from being an announcer, gets thrown in the mix, and it takes that guy a while too to kind of feel out what he's got and how to work with it, right?
Yeah. Yep. I think so. And I think Doc, I don't think Doc is the best coach in basketball. Eric, I appreciate it. Enjoyed the Survivor finale tonight. I don't know. We'll chat about it either tomorrow or Friday. I don't think Doc is the best coach in the world. I think he's fine. I think he could be good. Certainly out-coached Mark Daigneault last night, the Thunder's coach. Now it's in a one-game setting. That's another thing. You got to go 7 games, and you might have to move some chess pieces around the board. Who knows? But my God, if Giannis is going to continue to play like this, and him and Dame can continue to build chemistry, and Chris can continue to get healthy, okay, it's not a difficult chessboard for Doc. You just, nudge this, slide this, maybe one box. It's not like he's in a lab doing nuclear physics on, trying to win with, some Moneyball team of slaps that we've never heard from. Appreciate it, Eric. And I like all the Bucks. I like the people who are excited to talk about the Bucks today because I think it's warranted. Let's talk a little bit about UW Green Bay basketball. You want to talk about the Phoenix? Doug Gottlieb, going back a couple months when he was hired, I was like, this is interesting. His family's got history there. He seemed really interested in this job. He seemed really excited about this job. And sometimes it's just like, well, the program that is interested in me, I'm going to get excited about it. So, okay, maybe you would have gone anywhere and considered it, an awesome job and exactly what he was looking for. Maybe. But he seems to really like the Green Bay job. And from a majority of Green Bay people that I saw, tweets that I read, stories I read, like everyone hated this hire. Far be it from Green Bay people to think that their little corner of the state is on a higher plane than everywhere else, but they're like, Doug Gottlieb. Now he's hosting a radio show still, which is a little odd. I'll get that. And the results early haven't been there. So I'm not telling Phoenix fans or Horizon League fans that they shouldn't be frustrated or skeptical. It's a really hard job. God, it's a hard job. It's got to be such a tough program to take over. And I'm interested to see what Gottlieb can continue to do. I feel like I'm always defending Gottlieb. So a couple of things. He fights Schefter on Twitter the other day because Schefter tweets out for God knows what reason that Sacramento State has an NIL war chest of $50 million, which is almost impossible to believe. Which Gottlieb then gets in Schefter's mentions and is like, dude, do you just tweet out anything that an agent tells you to say? Which I think is harsh, but fair. And Schefter, they don't have $50 million in NIL funds. It's Sacramento State. I don't know what UW's NIL fund is, but if you were to tell me it was less than $50 million, I'd be like, okay, yeah. Like, I don't know how much they're paying for these players. I don't know. $50 million is an absurd amount of money, or at least it used to be. God knows with inflation. I'm kidding. Jar of peanut butter cost me $8 the other day. Buy generic. No, Jif is better. Jif is so much better. I'll pay for Jif. $50 million. So Gottlieb was right. And then Schefter tweets out the Green Bay record at whatever they were at the time, like 2-6 or something crappy. It's like, haha, Gottlieb got pwned. It's like, no, I think Doug Gottlieb's right. His mistake was engaging online when his team isn't any good because it's going to be hard for him to win any argument, right? So this is Gottlieb. This is from today talking about it. I thought this was an interesting explanation for the Twitter spat that he had with Adam Schefter.
That's my boss there. If he thinks I'm not working hard enough, he'll have a talk with me. I think our discussion after the tweet was that necessary? It probably wasn't. My tone was off. And I thought his comeback tone was way off. And I part of the energy towards Shefty was this. When people put out that a program has $50 million in NIL, it makes programs at this level, which is the same level basketball-wise, look like what are we doing? Because we're nowhere near that. Neither are they. Like my brother coached at Sacramento State. So there's no one who's more familiar with the Cal State system with Sacramento State than I am, outside of my brother because he coached there. So again, part of my energy towards it was like, there's just so much BS out there about what's really happening in the NIL world. And here we are, we're asking our donors to help us in any way possible financially. And how does that make them feel? Like, okay, we're nickel and diming, but like the reality is they're nowhere near that. I texted with Shefty, he texted me back. We're good. Obviously, I end up looking on social media the worse for it. Point remains that there's nothing about his tweet in terms of the facts which were accurate. And again, I don't necessarily blame him. I blame the people that just tell blatant lies to reporters and they go with the biggest number possible.
So is any of that wrong? Is any of that unfair? I don't think so. I think Schefter would now think like, well, God, why did I pick a fight with Schefter on Twitter? But also like, okay, I get where he's coming from. He's not just picking a fight with Schefter to pick a fight. He's like, guys, we're in the trenches at lower level Division I programs in college basketball. And you're tweeting out that Sacramento State has $50 million to play with. Like, so I understand where he's coming from there. Here's the second half of this comment. This is from today. This is from his press conference.
Not my finest moment, but I think one thing you guys will learn, and it will learn eventually in the positive, is whatever I do is going to draw a ton of attention. And I have a certain tone sometimes to the way I speak, and especially to the way I tweet, which can upset people.
Relatable.
But I promise you that even though it's in the negative now, it'll be in the positive soon. And, we'll keep all the receipts and we'll just keep doing our job. But to people who say I'm torn, I'm split, just hang out with me for a day. I'm as dedicated to this job as any human being has ever been. And I'm going to see it through until we win a Horizon League championship. This is my dream job, and I will not fall short of the 100% effort that's required.
All right. Again, it's all fair. It's all reasonable. Is there a reason people don't like the guy? Now, if you're a fan, team's no good. You're not winning. So that's frustrating. And then you're like, wait, you're spending how many hours a day hosting a radio show? Which, by the way, he wasn't on today. And I don't know if that was planned. Going from a game like 45 minutes from closing tip to a microphone to host a show, like I get why, tough. Maybe it was just a planned off day. Maybe he was going to be off today regardless of result. Probably was. I don't know why people are so up his butt. And then he goes viral today because he apparently refers to Michigan Tech, who they lost to. It was a bye game against a D2 team. He loses the bye game. But before the game, these comments are now circulating more since the loss. He apparently referred to Michigan Tech as nobody you. This is the audio. It's about 30 seconds.
Tiers on who to schedule, like nobody. And part of the reason I want to play better teams is like, it's 2 degrees outside, snowing. Like, I don't really like the idea of nobody you coming in here and like, I always thought, like, what do we learn playing a game where we win by 20? But there's a methodology to it. And I'm going to have to adjust moving forward.
I don't think he was referring to Michigan Tech as nobody you. I think he was making a bigger picture point about how, I prefer to play teams that are really good. I don't like scheduling lesser teams. And if we lose because of that scheduling decision, I think we're going to be a better team for it because you often learn more in close wins or close losses than you do in 20-point blowouts. And most coaches would reflect that if you talk to college coaches, right? Most coaches would reflect that. It's easier to learn in a loss than it is in some blowout win over a lesser team. The thing is, that was after a Kurt Hogue question and I texted Kurt too. I'm like, what exactly did you ask him? And he basically asked about the attention the program is getting and how this probably hasn't gotten off to the start that he hoped. Just a big picture question. And then he gets into scheduling and, down this rabbit hole. Like, I think he was just rambling. These comments make more sense if Green Bay was like 6-0, but they've played nobody so far. And he gets asked about it and he's like, look, the schedule is the schedule. I would like to schedule up because it doesn't really do anything for me to schedule nobody you to come in here. We beat them by 25. How does that make us a better team? Which is a fair point, but I don't know why he felt compelled to make that point, given that he's losing to even the bad teams. And it wasn't really the question that was asked. But to circle back to my original point, I don't think he's referring to Michigan Tech as nobody you. I don't think that's what he's doing there. I think he's making a larger point about scheduling dynamics at a program like UW Green Bay, even though that point didn't need to be made at that time, and it certainly didn't be made in reference and response to Kurt's question. But it's not, I think, what everyone's making it out to be. Look, the team's not any good in their winnings. You want to be critical of them, fine. I don't really get the anger and the animosity for Doug Gottlieb that's been there from the jump. It would be one thing if people were really excited and buying what he was selling, and then so far the team stinks. But then where do we stand then on Luke Fickell? Well, you got to give him time. Okay, well, I'll give Luke Fickell time, but then why don't we give Gottlieb time? It's just everyone hated the guy and was so against him when he got here. And maybe I'm missing something. And I get like, oh, he stole credit cards in college. Okay, you didn't do anything. Let's talk about your time in college. You didn't do anything regrettable in college? Not a single thing? Not saying stealing credit cards is okay, but I feel like he's been a man about standing up to that over the years and owning that. I don't know. It's just weird. So I guess I'll be the one to defend Doug Gottlieb. I guess I'll be the one. Very interesting situation, though, which I guess is probably what Green Bay was hoping for. They probably hope to have some more wins, but at least people are talking about him, I guess. I mean, they're getting coverage on the mighty Wisco Sports Show, for God's sake. We'll wrap up hour number 1 next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Couple minutes before we break at 5 o'clock. If you have any Horizon League thoughts, if you have any Gottlieb thoughts, I think I'm being very reasonable. People don't seem to like Gottlieb. Okay, that's fine. I just want to know where that came from. Do you not like his show? Yeah, the results haven't been there. And I would understand that if people were excited about him at first and then turned because the results haven't been there. But people hated this hire from the jump. So I'm like, I don't know. If you have thoughts on that, I'll get to you right after 5 o'clock. I promise. We're going to get an update from Zach. A quick mention, shameless plug for next week. If you're an Eau Claire listener, if you listen on Sports Talk 105.1, WAYY, you're going to have 3 opportunities, I guess 2.5 opportunities to get out and see the show live. I'm going to be at Kai's Chevytown, the north side of Menominee, right off exit 41 on Monday from 4 to 6. I'm just going to do the show from the showroom. So if you need car maintenance, if you're planning to stop in, you're more than welcome to stop in and conduct whatever business at Kai's you needed to conduct anyways and say, hey, come by. I'm more than happy to meet you. Not that I'm some celebrity, but I'll be there. But really, we're going to try to pack Princeton Valley on Thursday, the 26th, right off the North Crossing in Eau Claire. We'll be at the bar. We'll be in the clubhouse. I'm going to be doing the show, and we're just going to hang out, have food and drink. I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. We'll figure it out when we get there. It won't be that hard. I do a radio show every day. I just do it in a different spot. And then Friday, we'll be at Dean and Sue's off Highway 29, the west side of Menominee. So if one of those days doesn't work and you're in Eau Claire, Menominee, well, it's a 25-minute drive. Even if you got to come over to Eau Claire, over to Menominee, it's close. Both Facebook events are posted on the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bill's Facebook page. Go RSVP, share, bring friends. Very excited to see you next Thursday and Friday. Hour number 2 coming up next.
This is a Wisconsin Sports Zone update.
Well, it's an off day for the Packers. They're going to get back on the field tomorrow, start prepping for Monday night's matchup against the Saints. They could very well go into the game already having clinched a playoff berth, depending on how some of the games go on Sunday. No matter what, though, a win over the Saints will put them into the postseason for a second straight year and for a fifth time in Matt LaFleur's 6 years as coach. But as you'd expect, LaFleur not focused on what comes after the regular season just yet.
I'm not worried about playoffs. Not worried about it. I'm worried about us continuing to get better, staying in the moment, focusing on what's right in front of us. And it's by attacking our practices the right way and just building our habits. And it's all about how we improve throughout this process, and whatever happens, happens.
Again, it'll be the Packers and Saints on Monday night. One injury to watch, linebacker Quay Walker. He's got an ankle injury that LaFleur called week to week. Turning to Wisconsin, transfer portal continues to give and take away. A day after adding 6 players from the portal, Badgers lost wide receivers Will Pauling and CJ Williams. Both have 1 year of eligibility left.
Actor portrayal.
When I first looked into life insurance, I worried about the hassle. Then I found Better Life. Their simplified issue whole life coverage plans mean no medical exam. I found a plan that fit my budget, and now my final expenses are covered. Plus, I get Better Life member benefits at no extra cost. That's definitely better.
Better Life Insurance, where better means belonging. Call 888-488-4136. Insurance issued by Better Life Insurance Company. Terms and conditions apply. Member benefits are subject to change. Contact a licensed agent for details.
Well, the Bucs won the NBA Cup title last night, but didn't celebrate too much. All the champagne and beer sat unopened with the team's focus instead of maintaining the momentum they built since a 2-8 start. Going to take on the Cavs on Friday. And the Wisconsin basketball team back on the floor for practice today. They don't play again until Sunday against Detroit Mercy. With this Wisconsin Sports Zone Network update, I'm Zach Heil.
Thank you, Malika. To the people of Las Vegas, thank you for being such wonderful hosts. To Oklahoma City Thunder, thank you for competing so hard for an incredible run. And to the Milwaukee Bucks, congratulations, Wes, John, owners, Doc, what an incredible show. Now for the players, first of all, for these young folks from the YMCA, we have some special medals to present you. Please present the medals. All right, and now, Wes, for the presentation of the Emirates NBA Cup, your champions, the Milwaukee Bucks. Come get your trophy.
No one here doubted what we can be and who we can be. And we just hung in there. We stuck together, and this is the byproduct of a team sticking together. But we still have work to do.
This is where Wisconsin gathers to talk sports. Packers, Brewers, Badgers, Bucks. The Wisco Sports Show is on the air. Now, here's your host, Grant Bills.
Special night. I'll never forget where I was when the Bucks won the NBA Cup. I think the NBA Cup has mostly been a very good thing for the NBA. Not going to act like they've reinvented the wheel, but I think it's been a very positive thing they've done for the last 2 years. And as I talked about with Justin last night, like if there are people out there who are going to be like, well, this is dumb. Why should I care about this? I guess you don't have to care about it. If you're not already predisposed to want to watch good basketball, then I can't help you. But my biggest issue, really my only real issue with the NBA is way too often I buy tickets to a game or I go to a game and it doesn't really seem like the teams really are competing that hard. You talk about all the other things, too many threes or they're always preaching social justice, this or that. And the TV, the booth stinks, the announcers stink. Okay, well, yeah, some of those things might be true. They might mean more or less to each individual, the way that you consume sports and what you expect from sports. Really, if I can turn on a game and watch two teams trying really hard to win the game, that's really all I need. And we're getting that the last couple weeks from the NBA Cup. I think it's a good thing. And Bucks fans, this will give us an opportunity to talk down to other fan bases, which is always fun. As Packers fans, we have countless opportunities to just talk down to fans. Just get a quarterback. It's not that hard. Just draft and develop a quarterback. It's not that hard. Or as owners. It's like, well, yeah, I'm better than the common fan because I'm an owner. It's great to be able to say. It's a card that you can always play on every other fan base. And now with the Bucks, it's like if any fan other than a Lakers fan tells you, oh, the NBA Cup is stupid, you can just hit them with it. Well, you wouldn't know. You don't know what it actually means. You've never won one. And what are they going to tell you? Oh, no, you've never won. I guess you just don't get it. I can't. And I don't know when that's going to come up in my day-to-day life where I'm going to be able to hit someone with that. But I look forward to the day. Can't wait to play that card. If you have any thoughts on what we've talked about so far, Bucks, UW Green Bay basketball, which I did not expect to discuss when I came into work today. I'll take your calls now, and then we're going to switch to Packers in a couple of minutes. Jesse Temple in about a half hour. 608-321-1670. It's the Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Denny from Holman.
Denny from A. Hey, Denny. Now, I don't think we've talked this week, but I thought of you on Sunday. Nebraska girls volleyball that's a team. You just got to tip your cap, don't you?
Yeah, and you know what? Wisconsin, you could just tell after the first game, they were just spent. I mean, I kind of felt it was over after the first game because they. And you know what's really bad, like I said, is when we lose to Nebraska, we lose to our old ex-coach John Cook.
Mm-hmm.
And but they gave it a good year. It was a good year. Anytime you can make it to the grade 8, I think you're doing pretty good.
Yeah. I would agree. So what did you actually call in to talk about? Sorry to pigeonhole you with Badgers volleyball. The Bucks. Great. Great.
Yeah. I could not believe last night. I'm thinking, okay, these guys got to make a run. One of these times, even the announcers are saying, they're missing so many threes. You think they'd try to go to the hole and just get some twos and get some buckets, And it just kept going and going and going. It was one thing that I was kind of surprised about is Portis's play lately is not, I don't think, par up to what he used to be.
I think now that Chris is back, Bobby hasn't had to play as much or shoot as much. If he can be in a more limited role, he gives them some instant offense and some juice on the boards. I just think, you know what? Honestly, I think he had a couple week stretch a lot like Quay Walker. We're just like mentally, he was just kind of out of it. He was lost a little bit. And I think he's refocused the last couple games, and that's made a huge difference.
I agree. And I thought that the coaching was really good last night too. I thought that they subbed the players when they could see that they were, running out of gas and stuff. And I mean, I thought it was all together a great defensive and offensive effort for them.
I think so too. And I kind of like Denny. I appreciate it. I kind of like Oklahoma City losing. It's like, well, they had a bad shooting night. They couldn't hit any threes. Okay, well, if that's the only card you have to play, then you deserve to lose. I kind of like when teams shoot themselves out of games by just continuing to take threes. Okay, well, if that's the only thing that you can do and winning hinges on your ability to make a certain percentage of threes, if it's just a math problem for you, well, then I hope you lose because that's boring. That's no fun. And Nate Marzian tweeted earlier today something that I've been saying, and I'm not, it's not like I said it first. I'm glad that Nate made this point on Twitter because he has this huge following. It drives me nuts that so many people complain, well, all the NBA, all they do is shoot threes. I mean, it's a terrible product. And then here's a player, Giannis. He is this pterodactyl, Gumby, just war machine of a player who can jump over dudes, who can go through dudes, who can go through a triple team to throw it down. He could jump from the free throw line to dunk it. A player that shatters the mold of what a superstar player right now in the NBA is and what the math problem to winning NBA games is. It's like threes. Here's a player that's completely cutting against that grain and fun as hell to watch. And NBA fans, which are mostly douchebags on Twitter, are like, run and dunk, man. No skill. It's like, okay, well, then you just want to be miserable, which, of course, that's what most people want to do. You just want to be miserable online. Run and dunk, no skill. Okay, well, do you want to complain about threes or do you want to complain about Giannis? Because, you have to like something. You can't just hate everything. 608-321-1670. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, it's Uncle Patrick.
Uncle Packer, good evening.
Good evening. I've got so much to talk about. I'm worried about people going through withdrawals from the NBA Cup being over. Man, that was exciting. Huh?
Yeah, I got the post-Cup blues. I really do.
Yeah, it's amazing. Giannis's whole deal is going to be health. I mean, I'm excited about the Bucks, and I was really kind of angry with them last year because I'm sick of this going into the series. The regular season means very little. It's all about where your placement for the spot, the real season, the tournament, And I really want to see how they're doing with his health. He is amazing. And I just think Oklahoma probably missed another three-pointer. I've never seen a team that bad at three-point shooting.
They looked like a team of young kids who live in Oklahoma City that have been in Las Vegas for a couple days. And I don't blame them for that. And also, you know, sometimes with Uncle Packer, you get in these weird gyms. They don't play games in that arena very often. The sight lines can get weird, right? It's an arena. Maybe it's set up a little bit differently. You never know what affects shooters. Or maybe they just had a bad night. Or maybe it was probably some combination of all. But whatever. If you need to make a certain number of threes, if your path to victory is a math problem, well, then I don't want you winning because that's boring. That's a bad product the way I see it.
Hey, and as for the Doug Gottlieb show, I kind of dig it that he's doing this because I'm really caught up on the Phoenix now. I listen, and I like Doug Gottlieb. You know what I mean? I wish him well. I wish him good luck. I'm glad he's doing it in Wisconsin. It's a big task. But, you know, the weirdest thing about this show is that Dan Beyer is on there a lot. And Dan Beyer is so good. I love this voice. I love the way he does stuff. He's so professional. And that he's from Wisconsin, and he's a Seahawks fan. And I just can't figure this guy out. He never talks much about the Brewers, the Bucks. And what boy would be raised in Wisconsin and be a Seahawks fan?
So I personally like when national sports talk hosts make it clear who their favorite teams are and mention it, because that on some level that humanizes them, right, Uncle Packer? Like, I don't want to listen to a national talker unless you're like Cowherd, like you're so far above it, you're such a big deal. Then like that's a little different. But like our friend Bart, he's on overnights on the Infinity Sports Network. He'll mention, I'm in Milwaukee. These are my team. You know what I mean? Like, I like that, but I think hosts avoid it because they don't want to come across as fanboys. But we want some fandom in our sports talk. Otherwise, the host is just a robot. That's boring.
Well, he's not quiet about being a Seahawks fan, and I know he's from Wisconsin. He talks about it, so it's kind of weird. That's just weird to me. I wonder how that happened to him. You know?
What if he was a Sherman guy? Like it's weird. Some Packers fans left with Favre. Maybe he's just a weirdo who left, not Sherman. He left with Holmgren is what I meant to say. He's like, I hate how it ended with Holmgren. I followed him, which is just,
he's a smart, good guy. He's going to be big time. You watch. I think he's going to make it, you know, his own radio show. He's a pretty talented fella. Dan Beyer.
How old is he?
I wanted to tell you that the Packers are off today. I think it's going to be an easy win, a blowout win. That's what people are calling. What do you think?
I hope so. Did you say Packers? I'm sorry. I was reading about Dan Beyer.
Packers.
I'm so sorry. Packers.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes. I think it will be a blowout win, Uncle Packer, and I'm going to cut you off right there because I think that's going to be perfect. That's a perfect place to end because I want to get into that with the Packers next. For the first time all season, I really think it's crucial that the Packers get a lot of style points on Monday. And I want your thoughts on that. The way that the schedule has fallen up until this point, the way that the schedule falls after Monday night in their two remaining games at US Bank and then at home against the Bears and whatever's to come in the playoffs. I think style points on Monday night are more important than they've been for the Packers in any other game so far this season. I don't think it's close. So I'm glad that's where you ended, Uncle Packer. And I'm sorry I was reading about Dan Beyer. He's from Merrill. Interesting. I don't know anything about this guy. You said he's going to have his own show one day. He's like 50, Uncle Packer. He kind of already does have his own show. I don't know. I need to research that on my own time, not when you're talking. I'm sorry, Uncle Packer. But your point leads us perfectly into what I want to talk about next. One more caller, and then we'll break a little early, and I want to get into the Packers and talk about style points next. Wisco Sports Show. Who's this?
Hey, Grant. It's Clemhead Mike.
Clemhead. Now, you would never abandon your team. That couldn't possibly be why, right? Like born in Wisconsin and then become a Seahawks fan because nobody's that big of a Mike Holmgren fan. That couldn't be it, right?
No, I've been a Packers fan since the 1960s. So, no.
That would be just because people do switch teams. I have a friend who grew up a diehard Favre fan, and he didn't like how it ended. So he's not really a Packers fan anymore. And I'm like, okay, I see it. I see how that happened. I imagine being like, I was just a huge Holmgren guy. So I followed him to Seattle. It would just be kind of funny. I'd almost respect it.
Yeah, I was disappointed when my son married a Vikings fan, and she's from Wisconsin too. So I just hope my kids don't, or my grandkids don't turn out.
My significant other's a Vikings fan too. Keeps it spicy. Keeps things spicy.
Yeah. I was just thinking, I've talked to you about this before. Doc Rivers, he's been coaching in the NBA since 1999. He has one NBA championship in 2008 with the super team.
Yep.
I looked him up. He's considered one of the top 15 coaches in NBA history, and they probably had to extend it from 10 to 15 to include him. And I wonder if he'll put this on his resume as a second championship. Now I've won two. And I always say he sounds so much like Louis Fetchmore Armstrong. The only difference between the two is that Louis has won this NBA championship. So I don't have a lot of respect for Doc Rivers.
You think Doc Rivers could play the trumpet if you put one in his hand? I wonder.
Yeah,
maybe
that would be wonderful. So
I'd get a kick
yeah, I do to switch gears. I do want to agree with you about the style points. I think that if the Packers need a blowout Sunday night, they really do. So
I agree. I think they need some style points. I think they need to drag this team. And Clemhead, I'm going to leave it right there because it's a perfect place to end the call. The style points. You and your Eau Claire brethren, Uncle Packer, the same page. When we come back, I'm going to break early. Jesse Temple still to come. We'll talk college football and everything that's transpired in the transfer portal coaching change realm at 5:35. Coming up next, I want to explain to you why I think it's important that the Packers win with style points. And you know me, I don't really get hung up on style points. I don't think I've hammered that a lot. We celebrated the Seahawks win on Monday as the biggest win of the year. I still confidently say that that's the biggest win of the year with a bullet, even though they could have used some more style points. I need style points and then some on Monday night, and I'll explain why next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Wisco Sports Show. Jesse Temple in about 10, 12 minutes. Bill Michaels Huddle coming up at 6 o'clock. Mike Clemens will join him tonight. Mike Renner and Mark Schofield as well. Football Palooza as we start to look forward to week 16, right? Week 16, 3 more weeks, 16, 17, and 18. Even if I'm a week off. You know what I mean. Packers Saints coming up on Monday Night Football. And that's what I want to talk about next. We've talked plenty of Bucks. I think we've paid more than enough service to the Bucks and their accomplishments, not just last night, but over the run towards the NBA Cup and some of the games. I mean, they're 18 and, was it 18 and 2, 16 and 2, 16 and 2, 13 and 3. Why did I have 18 and 2? 13 and 3 in their last 16, following their 2 and 10 start or 2 and 8 start in their first 10. Ignore all that numbers, tripping over my words. But we paid service to the Bucks, talked a little bit about what's going on with Gottlieb at UW Green Bay. Some interesting sound from earlier today as well. I want to talk Packers, and I want to revisit something that Vagabond John said last week going into the Seattle game. I don't want to misquote him, so I'll just paraphrase. His point was basically, this game is more important than most people think, because if you look at the playoff odds and their remaining schedule, like, it could get hairy quick if they lose this game and then one other, and don't count out the Bears rivalry game, divisional matchup in week 18. They're going to want to beat you at Lambeau and get revenge for earlier on in the year, all that stuff. Okay. Now, I'm really not worried about the playoff odds. They were at like 97 or 98% going into the Seattle game. Not a formality that they're going to make the playoffs, but it feels pretty darn close. Even had they lost in Seattle, I wasn't really all that worried about it. But had they lost in Seattle, they would have gone from 9-5. And all of a sudden, they're a little close for comfort, for my comfort at least, with the Rams and with the Commanders. And if they were to lose in Seattle, well, now the Saints game coming up on Monday night is viewed as a must-win. You got to have it. Because if you lose to New Orleans, now you're turning around and you're going to US Bank. And what could have been 10-4 becomes 9-5, becomes 9-6, and now you're staring at 9-7, and oh my God, what happened? Right? Still might probably make the playoffs, but you just don't feel as good as you should. You don't feel as good as you could about any of it, right? Now the Packers win in Seattle, go to 10-4, feel even better about their playoff spot, which I already felt good about. But they now can attack this final 3-week stretch from a position of strength. Instead of saying, oh God, well, now we got to get the Saints game. Now it's, oh, we're going to kick the ever-living piss out of New Orleans at home. And I think they need to feel as good as possible about the team and their future and, what could happen over the next month or so. I think style points are required on Monday night. They're going to be starting Spencer Rattler, probably, who's awful. No Olave, no Shaheed. Kamara is questionable. And if I'm reading between the tea leaves, I saw the Saints added Clyde Edwards-Helaire today, which maybe is just insurance. But is that a sign that maybe they don't feel great about Kamara's ability to go on Monday night? I don't know. Their coach is an interim special teams guy who clogs toilets, and you're getting them in the cold. And even if it's 40 degrees, it doesn't have to be 16 degrees. Even if it's 40 degrees, you're still taking a team from the South with a backup quarterback, a fake coach. They're used to playing in a dome. Their season's been over forever. That team is ripe. That team is begging to quit at the end of the first quarter. I don't often harp on style points. I don't do this often. I think this game needs to be over at halftime. I think this needs to be the stomp that we've kind of been waiting for. We thought maybe it'd be Jacksonville, but okay, then Jordan Love gets hurt. Thought that maybe it could have been the Bears, but the Bears fired their offensive coordinator. They get a little bump from that. I think this is the game that we've been waiting for. I think this has got to be it. And I think style points are required for feeling as good as possible about this team, for then going into Minnesota like, now it's time. This is now the time and place where we nail one to the wall, where we bag one of these teams that are above us in the standings, which up until this point, they've been unable to do. I think Monday night is huge, and I think they need to blast the Saints. I think they have every ability to do so, and I think things are lining up for them to do so. Got to have it. And it's really the first time all season that I've said that. Like, I didn't come in on Monday being like, yeah, they won in Seattle, but how great was it really? Like, no, they won by 28 against the Niners. They won by 13 over the Dolphins, and they won by 17 in Seattle. Those 3 wins are pretty solid. I'm not going to nitpick those too much. You're going to find little things throughout the game to kind of focus on and talk about. But in the big picture, in the aggregate, those were 3 very good wins. They covered comfortably and all. This win, I need this one to be great, not just good. I'm talking about 45-10. Party at Lambeau in Green Bay, Christmas week. I think that's what this needs to be. 608-321-1670 if you have thoughts on this. Wisco Sports Show. Hello, who's this?
Grant, how we doing?
I was kind of hoping this would be you because I kind of set this up using your point that you made last week.
You did a little bit. That's good. I guess my counter is you said this game needs to be over by halftime.
Figure of
And my
speech.
counter
But
is,
yeah.
or what?
Well, figure of speech enough. Okay, forget if it's over by half. Don't you kind of get what I'm saying?
Dominant.
Like, what are you getting at here?
I like calling in the second half of the show because I like tying the first segment to the second half of the show. And how I'm going to tie these two together, tipping my pitches here, is I think this is what separates the NFL, man, from the NBA, right? You just went and told us every single reason why the Saints are going to be beat up. They're trodden down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the freaking NFL, man. These guys get like 4 years to make life-changing money.
Sure.
And all 53 members of that Saints roster are in a position where they are fighting to get a free agency contract, right, to be invited back to the Saints roster next year when they blow the whole thing up, right? So everybody, you're going to get their best effort, man. And it's the NFL, and I think that's what separates it from the NBA. And I think that's why these games, even in the late season, can be fun. And you see it every single year. Dominant playoff teams trip up in the end, right? I mean, in the last couple of weeks, you're going to see a couple of teams take their eye off the ball, relax, and you're going to see one of these teams that has nothing to play for pull a shocking upset. So for that reason, I think the Packers just need to win.
What do you think the final score of Monday night's game is going to be? If you had to predict right now, I realize this is unfair. Don't overthink it. What do you think the final score will be?
Ooh, I'm going to say that Jeff Hapley and his Packers defense continues to dominate against lesser teams. And I'm going to say let's go 24-10.
You think they're only going to score
standard game?
How do you think they're only going to score 24 points?
That's just what my gut says.
Okay. I told you to just say it. It wasn't, I shouldn't now jump down your throat. I don't understand. They scored 30 in Seattle, 34 on Detroit, 30 against Miami, 38 on San Francisco. They're at home against a team that's beat up. I understand they're going to fight, but I don't know. I don't know how you can look at this game and see anything other than this is the wounded animal and the time for a beatdown, the likes of which we haven't seen so far yet this year.
And I think my answer, I'm going back to it, is in the NFL, when you have a wounded animal and you make any sort of assumption about them, that's when they tend to fight back. Didn't we lose to Tommy freaking DeVito a couple of years ago? Like the NFL is crazy, man.
I think the Packers are bad. I think the Packers are much. I think they're better this year than they were last year. I think this is a more mature team. I think they're smarter.
A couple of fluky turnovers. I'm not against what you're saying. I think the Packers could go up 17-0 early, and then all of a sudden the third quarter happens again, and both teams just try to run the clock out as these players are just punching each other in the mouth right on the field. But these late season games, man, I don't think the scores, and I guess I'm kind of shooting from the hip here a little bit, but I don't think you see really high-scoring games towards the end of the season. I think it's cold weather. There's going to be a lot of ground and pound. The clock's going to be running a lot. Thank God for a Monday night football game. I'm sick of, waking up for work, or I guess it's a holiday, so I won't be working. But, you know how it is. I just don't know that. But, hey, Grant, before I let you go, I know you got Jesse Temple coming up. Is that pre-recorded again?
Yes. Is there anything?
Okay.
What did you want me to ask him?
Over-under for Julian Ballard, is the guy from Ohio State, right?
Yep.
Former 4-star, almost 5-star receiver committed today. 4 years at Ohio State. 40% of his career receiving yards came from one catch 3 years ago. So my question for you is over under 25 receptions in 25.
I mean, will
he make an impact?
I mean, I would take the under, but I don't know that that's some like gotcha thing. I would bet the under on every stat on every transfer they bring in, and then you hope that 2 or 3 of them pop, right? Like what are you hoping for? 30% of the transfers, if you can get those to pop, I think that's a job well done. No one has a high batting average in the transfer portal, I don't think.
It's portal season. You see all these flashy numbers. Ooh, 5 years ago, he was a top 10 receiver in his class, right? And so I think Badger fans, be excited, right? It's a great depth piece, but I'm saying he's behind Vinny Anthony. He's probably behind Chris Brooks. He's probably behind Quincy Burrows. And I think it's great to add depth in the portal. If you're thinking this guy's going to come here and change the program as a portal edition receiver, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, fool me 3 times. I don't know. Just give up, because this portal thing, you got to grant you're spot on about it, right? Spot on. It's not going to be program defining.
It probably will not be program defining. Even if he's great, it probably won't be program defining. But if I got to bet on one transfer popping, I got to say, a wide receiver with all of the traits that's been buried on the depth chart at Ohio State, Like, he's not buried on the depth chart at Iowa. It's like, wait, you couldn't crack the receiver rotation at Iowa? It's Ohio State. Not that Ryan Day knows it, but that team has a pretty solid group of outside receivers. Their aerial attack is pretty strong. So, again, I would bet against most transfer portal guys popping just because that's the way that the math would bear it out. It's very similar. It's like, would you bet on this team or the field? Well, I'm going to bet the field because the math just always lends that way. It lends itself to picking that way. I don't even remember Julian, whatever the John Smith, Harold Fenifet, whatever his name is. I don't even remember. But Toolsy wide receiver, buried on the depth chart at Ohio State. Like, okay, that's maybe a bet that I would make. I would put a couple of chips on that one. I'm not expecting him to be program defining. I'm not even expecting him to be great. But if you can hit on 2 or 3 transfer portal guys, which they've mostly been unable to do the last few years, they brought in guys who have just been guys. If they can get 2 or 3 guys to pop, that really helps the program. Doesn't define the program, really helps the program in the interim while Luke Fickell gets some of these recruits in and hopefully get some of these guys to play at a younger age. And Jesse's written about that, get them to build and grow and hopefully stay longer in the program. But if I got to bet on one guy, Toolsy wide receiver that was recruited and buried on the depth chart by Ohio State, seems like a half decent bet to make. Like I like that. I'd put a couple chips on that. Let's take a break. Couple minutes. We'll come back. Jesse Temple of The Athletic. We'll talk more about this next.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 5 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 4 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
It's the Wisco Sports Show, the Bill Michaels Huddle, 25 minutes away. And closing fast, Mike Clemens, Mike Renner, and Mark Schofield. You hear their voices. And the Packers are a day behind, so normally coaches would speak today and the locker room would be open if I have that schedule correct. Mike could certainly speak to it in more detail, but that will be tomorrow because they play on Monday, so today's technically not a Wednesday for the Packers. It's technically a Tuesday, which is an off day. It's a whole thing. So we'll get the latest, nonetheless, from Bill and from Mike and his guests coming up on the huddle. Speaking of guests, Jesse Temple joining us now. Well, joining us. I talked to him earlier this afternoon because his schedule recorded with him. It's about 14 minutes. Excellent Badger talk and all the latest from ingoing, outgoing players and changes on the coaching staff as well. Here's my conversation with him. Jesse Temple is here from The Athletic. You can catch him on the Camp with Zach as well. It's my favorite Badger podcast. I personally think it's the best Badger podcast. I can let you draw your own conclusion. Let's talk about some of the happenings over the last week, Jesse. Let's start with Alex Grinch because we talked about Grimes last week. So Alex Grinch is departing, someone who came from USC. He was the safeties coach, and this is actually their fourth safety coach, I think, in 4 years. There's a lot of turnover there. Is there anything at that position or on the defensive side of the ball, coaching-wise, the Badgers fans need to be following along? Anything that we should know?
Well, this to me always felt like a bit of a stopgap because Alex Grinch has been a defensive coordinator with some pretty big schools. Obviously, previously, he was at USC, and so Wisconsin was in a position where Colin Hitchler had left for Alabama, and they needed somebody to fill that spot. And I felt like it was just a matter of time before he was going to go be a defensive coordinator somewhere else. So Luke Fickell's now in a position where he's got to hire two position coaches, a safeties coach and a quarterbacks coach, and it will be the fourth safeties coach in the last 4 seasons, dating back to when they had Jim Leonard, then they had Colin Hitchler, Alex Grinch, and whoever it's going to be next.
I suppose I forgot he was a defensive coordinator, and that's on me, right? I forget these things, but I suppose that makes sense given that it was, like you said, a stopgap and looking to get back to the job that he was already doing. Staying on the defensive side of the ball, and I'm following your reporting and others on the Badgers beat about a multitude now of defensive linemen who have come in, and I don't know much about these guys. I'm interested in height and weight because I think they've been small and they were pushed around by schools like Iowa and Nebraska. So I'm always paying, are these guys bigger? Are they stronger? What do you think of these 3 or 4 defensive linemen they've added in the portal? What do we need to know about that?
Well, it's really impressive the way Wisconsin has remade its defensive line group pretty quickly in the transfer portal process. They lost 3 transfers, James Thompson Jr., Kurt Neal, and Hank Weber. And so they went and got guys that are, I guess you could say, from a lower level. Charles Perkins played at UT Martin, Parker Peterson at Tulane, and Corey Walker at Western Michigan. But they know they want to get bigger and beefier. And these are 6'4", 6'5", 300-plus pound guys that have productivity. I think it's been really interesting to watch the strategy here by Wisconsin. Yes, some guys are coming from Power 4 programs, but a lot of them are coming from the lower level. Maybe some of that has to do with affordability, though I don't want to pigeonhole Wisconsin and say that they can't afford players. They just got a Power 4 quarterback. But a lot of it, I think, goes into the philosophy that Luke Fickell has that he talked about a year ago, where he likes guys that are coming up a level and feel like they have something to prove. I talked to all 3 of these guys, and I know that this is a huge opportunity for all of them, and they feel like they can be key contributors right away and maybe just part of a 5-man rotation where everyone's getting 35, 40 snaps on the D-line.
Well, and I talked about this with Zach on Monday, talking about some of these guys who have come from smaller schools, right? And he almost made a comparison to Greg Gard and what the Badgers basketball program did this winter. It's like, well, we're going to go find, or I guess this summer, we're going to go find guys who have the traits that we love, even if they're not in big time programs, winning programs, right? Even if they haven't put up gaudy numbers, we're going to go look for the body types and the types of players that we want. And it doesn't really matter where they come from. Do you think that's a fair comparison? Is that something that you and Zach have talked about?
A little bit. I think it comes down to a couple different factors, but productivity matters. Would you rather have somebody who's been at a Power 4 program that really didn't do very much, or someone that has dominated at a certain level? Now, we've seen it's a bit of a crapshoot. They've had some success going down to lower levels. Elijah Hills comes to mind, a defensive lineman who only had 1 year, unfortunately, for Wisconsin when he arrived in Madison, but he had a lot of success at Albany. Nazir Forkurian was a great cornerback at the Division II level. And so if they can get that type of productivity with people who are confident and have had success in college, then I think they feel like they're in a good spot.
Are you surprised that Will Pauling left? I'm not shocked, but I don't know. It's a guy who's done well here. I guess I was a little surprised.
Yeah, I'm definitely surprised about Pauling leaving. I think it's the biggest blow so far among the guys that have left because of his productivity. You go back to 2023, he had 74 catches. Now, he didn't match that production this past season. He was hurt in a few games, so I think he missed 3 games total. But he came here in part to play in an offense for Phil Longo, where, as Phil Longo once said, he loves slot receivers more than anybody outside of his family. And I think I'll be interested to see where he ultimately lands. And he left on the same day that C.J. Williams left. But the Williams one is probably less of a surprise. Wisconsin clearly had been targeting some big-bodied wide receivers and just got a commitment from Jaden Ballard, who's a former 4-star prospect and spent his career at Ohio State, has a year left. But the Pauling one certainly stands out.
So what about this tight end? I'm sorry, I just keep throwing these names at you, and you have stories up about specifically this tight end as well. But I saw a lot of people get excited, but this is another guy who's from a smaller school. He comes from Ball State, but a lot of hype around this tight end.
Well, it comes back to the productivity, and his story is really interesting. I had a chance to talk to his former coach at Ball State as well for this story, but someone who had almost no offers out of high school, one of those classic stories where he had, I think, 3 FCS scholarship offers, no FBS offers, but Ball State's coach went to watch a high school game for his son, and on the other team was this 6'6" wide receiver who was a mismatch problem and ended up gray shirting at Ball State. So he enrolled late in January so he could then go on scholarship and instantly became an impact player. And this past season as a junior, he had 94 catches, 7.8 catches a game, which is 4th in the country. And so Wisconsin has not had a guy like this at tight end since Jake Ferguson left 3 years ago to become an NFL draft pick. So I'm not saying he's going to have 94 catches. The all-time single-season program record at Wisconsin is Jared Aberderis, who had 78 in 2013. But this is, I think, a critical pickup when you consider that his numbers this past season alone are more than every tight end Wisconsin has had that has played in the past 3 seasons.
Jesse Temple is here from The Athletic. Let's talk about the quarterbacks. We could spend a couple minutes on this. So they add Danny O'Neal, and they add from Maryland, and we assume this was a bigger get, maybe in terms of NIL resources. We don't know for sure, but Maryland quarterback or former Maryland quarterback Billy Edwards Jr. So the way I see it, and I talked with Zach on Bill's show on Monday because I was in for Bill, Billy Edwards Jr. is kind of the transfer to come in and play, we presume. And then O'Neal is a developmental quarterback to add into the room. Am I framing that correctly? And then, what other details might we need to know about the way this room is stacking up so far?
That is accurate, and that is how they framed it to Danny. Not necessarily that you're a developmental quarterback, but we're going to go and get a couple guys. You're our top guy in terms of someone with multiple years of eligibility, and then we're going to go and get a veteran, and that is Billy Edwards Jr., who had 15 touchdowns, 9 interceptions this past season for Maryland, but I think maybe better than what the stats would indicate. Certainly through his first 7 games, had 13 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. So you're bringing him in to start, and it's the 3rd consecutive offseason Wisconsin has gone to the portal to get a guy with 1 year of eligibility left, which is always tough, but you needed some certainty here going into year 3.
Yep.
And then Danny O'Neal has 3 years of eligibility left, but I think he's a unique case because he started as a true freshman at San Diego State. So it's not a young guy who doesn't have any playing experience. And so now you've got a room going into this spring that, as of now, are 4 scholarship quarterbacks with Edwards O'Neal. Maybe Matire still has 4 years left. And then Carter Smith is coming in as a true freshman early enrollee who was a top 15 4-star quarterback in the 2025 class.
So something that I really want to ask you about, specifically about O'Neal. When you talk to these players, Jesse, and their representation and their families, and you just get a sense of kind of their mindset when they come to Wisconsin, or maybe when they go, but in the instance of Danny O'Neal, when he's coming to Wisconsin, he's got to know, his camp has got to know on some level that it's a fairly narrow path for him to play, probably, right? Because Matauer is already here, right? Carter Smith is the 4-star. Those guys are here. Like, what do you hear from transfers like O'Neal who are coming in as depth adds, right? And as fans, we love that. Better to have more. But a guy like O'Neal has got to know that this is going to be a difficult place for him to eventually get playing time, perhaps. So what do you hear? What's their mindset when you talk to players in this position who join the program?
Well, his situation is a little unique because generally speaking, I think you're getting guys who didn't play and are frustrated with their situation. And again, this is a dude who started as a true freshman at the Division I level. His biggest reason for leaving, at least what he said, and I also talked to his high school coach, he's from Indianapolis, and I think it really mattered to him to play somewhere closer to home. So his parents and family wouldn't have to fly 10 times a year to go watch him play. Now I realize Indianapolis to Madison is not exactly a jaunt. Just get in the car and in an hour and a half you're there, but it does matter. So I think that is part of the decision-making process here. But he felt like Wisconsin laid out, as he called it, a whole plan for him and the future of this program. And I think there are no guarantees in any of this, but the best Wisconsin can tell him is, okay, you are our number one guy we're getting that has the multiple years of eligibility left in the portal. We're getting an older guy. So Billy Edwards has 1 year, and after that, you're going to have every opportunity to potentially earn the starting job. Yes, there's a lot of talent, at least young talent, that's unproven in that quarterback room. And because there's only one quarterback who can play, some people aren't going to be happy. And it's inevitable now in the transfer portal era that guys are going to leave. But ultimately for Wisconsin, if you can create competition and Danny O'Neal is the best guy and somebody else leaves, it's not the worst thing in the world because you want the best quarterback that you can have. And so I think in part you have to look at this too, where if you're going to go from a place where you're starting to a different program, there's always going to be competition. And you'll hear this from quarterbacks everywhere, but there's 4 or 5 scholarship quarterbacks in a given school. And so if you expect to not have a competition, then you're in the wrong business.
Sure. It's just, I like it. It's bold. It's confident, right? And the family is a real thing. And there's always personal, there's personal things at play that I think we often forget about. We just assume it's money and playing time. Well, there's a lot of money to be had and there's playing time to be had, right? Some of these kids are, thousands of miles away from their families, which is something that I often forget when I talk about some of these players that come and go. Big picture question to wrap up, Jesse. Do you think Wisconsin has done things differently in the transfer portal with Luke Fickell this offseason compared to the last 2 off seasons? Have they adjusted in any way? Have you seen a change in approach or strategy? Maybe how has this offseason so far been different than the last 2?
Hard for me to say. I mean, I think when you say different, it would be what is the talent level or productivity, and you can't know until you get to the season. I think people got very excited in the first off season, and understandably so. It was just so different, and the portal was still relatively new, so they were getting 15 scholarship guys, people that either had played at a high level, like at Cincinnati, or guys that were former top 10 wide receivers, like C.J. Williams. And I'm looking at this group going, there are some real intriguing pieces. We talked about Tanner Koziel, the tight end from Ball State. I mentioned Jaden Ballard, the former 4-star wide receiver from Ohio State. They have a couple different quarterbacks, but until I actually get to see them, and not even just in spring practice, but next season, it's really hard for me to know whether this is a better class. In terms of the approach, I think very clearly it's a targeted approach that you go into the offseason and you see who's leaving and you know exactly what positions you need. And if you're going to offer 7 guys, you better get at least 1 or 2 of them. But right now, it's such a difficult question to answer because you just don't know how the pieces of the puzzle are going to fit together.
Sure. I like that they're getting bigger on defense. I guess that's one thing at this moment in time I could be like, okay, there's facts and numbers on paper that I can actually wrap my arms around. We'll have to see how the guys slot and how they perform, of course. Is there anything that we should watch for at The Athletic? I know anytime there's news that's going to break, right, you'll be covering that, but anything you have planned that we should watch for?
Well, I've certainly talked to a handful of these guys, so I'll have some stories coming, one on Daniel O'Neal, one on the overhaul along the defensive line. I mentioned I've talked to all 3 of those D linemen that have committed from the portal, and then also working on a story that is not related to the portal, but is related to the roster because they're going to have 15 early enrollees coming in here in about 2 or 3 weeks, which is a program record, and just kind of the way things have shifted here where more early enrollees are coming to Wisconsin than ever because they want to play early. It's not the transfer portal, but everybody wants to get in early and make an impact.
I'm looking forward to the next couple of weeks as things start to settle and we get a crystallized picture. And of course, the college football playoff. Not that Wisconsin will be a part of it, but we're going to see a lot of fun games in home stadiums too, which I'm looking forward to. Thank you for the time, Jesse. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Grant.
This is the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills on the Wisconsin Sports Zone Radio Network.
The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 3 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 2 minutes. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 1 minute. The Wisco Sports Show will resume in 30 seconds.
Not my finest moment, but I think one thing you guys will learn, and it will learn eventually in the positive, is whatever I do is going to draw a ton of attention. And I have a certain tone sometimes to the way I speak, and especially to the way I tweet, which can upset people. But I promise you that even though it's in the negative now, it'll be in the positive soon. And, we'll keep all the receipts and we'll just keep doing our job. But to people who say I'm torn, I'm split, just hang out with me for a day. I'm as dedicated to this job as any human being has ever been, and I'm going to see it through until we win a Horizon League championship. This is my dream job, and I will not fall short of the 100% effort that's required.
That's Gottlieb earlier today. A lot of people talking about UW Green Bay basketball online today. After Gottlieb fought with Schefter earlier in the week on Twitter. And by the way, Gottlieb was right. Seems like for some reason, a lot of people don't like him. Maybe I'm the one who's in the dark on why nobody seems to like Doug Gottlieb. I liked him, like his show well enough. As much as you can like a national show that's not connected to your state. Although it is now, right? He hosts it out of Green Bay. Now, I understand why people would be frustrated when Doug Gottlieb was like, look, Something to know about me is everything I do, it's going to attract a lot of attention. And I realize right now that's a bad thing, but soon it'll be a good thing. You know, if I was a Green Bay fan, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to need to see some proof. But how is that any different from Luke Fickell being like, yeah, I understand why fans would be frustrated. I don't blame them. Just trust me. Okay. But we extend that trust to some coaches. It seems like Gottlieb's not getting it. And I'm not here to tell UW Green Bay fans or Horizon League fans that they're wrong about anything. I'm a little confused. Everyone hated this hire from the moment that it was made, and it feels like that's kind of colored everything that's happened so far. And maybe it's the outlandishness or perceived outlandishness of someone hosting a daily radio show while also coaching a Division I program. Maybe that's it. Maybe people look at that and they're like, well, that's silly, right? No one should do that. That's too much. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe we'll see if it bears out. I thought his commentary was good today. His comments about Schefter, I thought were really interesting. Like, I don't know, because he was beefing with Schefter about the proceeding. I'm just going to play this again. I think this is really interesting audio.
That's my boss there. If he thinks I'm not working hard enough, he'll have a talk with me. You know, I think our discussion after the tweet was that necessary? It probably wasn't. My tone was off. And I thought his comeback tone was way off. And I part of the energy towards Shefty was this. When people put out that a program has $50 million in NIL, it makes programs at this level, which is the same level basketball-wise, look like what are we doing? Because we're nowhere near that. Neither are they. Like my brother coached at Sacramento State. So there is no one who's more familiar with the Cal State system with Sacramento State than I am, outside of my brother because he coached there. So again, part of my energy towards it was like, there's just so much BS out there about what's really happening in the NIL world. And here we are, we're asking our donors to help us in any way possible financially. And how does that make them feel? Like, okay, we're nickel and diming, but like the reality is they're nowhere near that. I texted with Shefty, he texted me back. We're good. Obviously, I end up looking on social media the worse for it. Point remains that there's nothing about his tweet in terms of the facts which were accurate. And again, I don't necessarily blame him. I blame the people that just tell blatant lies to reporters and they go with the biggest number possible.
So that's interesting. And when I saw Gottlieb tweeting back at Schefter, it's like $50 million at Sacramento State. That's ridiculous. I'm like, yeah, it probably is ridiculous. Like Gottlieb is right here. And then Schefter is like, good argument. Unfortunately, your team stinks. And now I can throw that back in your face and win the Twitter exchange, which is tough. Like Gottlieb really can't have strong takes on anything. And he really can't go online and fight people unless his team is winning because they're just going to throw that back in his face. And I guess maybe that's people's issue with Doug so far is that he's not winning. It's a results-oriented business. So I guess. I just think some of the things that people are rolling him over the coals for, it's like, I don't really know that he's as wrong or as in the wrong as the public writ large seems to think. I don't know. But then again, I'm not a diehard for the Horizon League, so I'm not going to stoop down. That's disrespectful. I'm not going to tell UW Green Bay people to feel a certain way. It's like, I'm a Badger fan and I pay attention to the Big Ten and the WEAC. I'm a WEAC fan. That's really what it comes down to. But I understand this got a lot of people fired up today. So I thought it made a worthwhile conversation at the very least. The podcast will go up in just a couple minutes. By the way, to our Eau Claire audience, one more time, couple live shows next week. Princeton Valley Golf on Thursday, just off the North Crossing. Come see the live show. And then on Friday, we're going to be at Dean and Sue's, the west side of Menominee, just off 29. I think it's on Midway. You know where it is. You know where I'm talking about. Go RSVP to the Facebook events on my Facebook page, the Wisco Sports Show with Grant Bills, because that'll get the thing circulating. That'll drum up some hype. And if you're coming, bring friends. Grab a couple of friends. If they've never heard the show, that's fine. We're going to have a good time. Bill Michaels Huddle coming up next. I'll talk to you tomorrow at 4.